Getting any message that
Yeah, recording has started.
yeah, okay, fine. So in this session, let us see or let us discuss about thread priorities,
Okay, sir.
right? So long back in the previous sessions, we have discussed about thread priority. By default, every thread will be assigned some priority, right? So what is that priority value? Default value is 5. So now let us write a program which will manipulate these priorities. Look at this program. I'm creating a class, only one class here, that is thread priority, and it is extending thread class. So that means what? I'm creating a new thread by extending thread class. Directly I'm defining the run method, and in the run method, what I'm doing is I'm simply displaying a message inside a run method. Then below this run method, I'm defining the main method. So that means in the thread class that we are creating, in this class itself, we are creating the main method. We are defining the main method, right?
Yeah,
Then what I'm doing is I'm creating 3 different objects, T1, T2, T3 for the same class. So we are in the same class thread priority. So from that class itself, within that class itself, we have the main method, and we are creating from the main method the objects for the same class in which we are located. Okay, so you can do that in Java programming. You can create an object for a class in the class itself. So normally, what we do, we create an object for a class outside the class in another class. Am I right or not?
yes,
In
sir.
the previous program that we have seen in the thread 1 class, so we have created Armstrong number class and perfect number class, and objects for these classes are declared or created in which class? In thread 1
Different class. Yeah,
class. But now here what we are doing is we are creating objects for the class within the same class. Because we don't have another class here, we have only one class. In the same class, we are defining both the run method as well as the main method, and we are extending this class with thread class, right? So because you are extending thread class, you have to override the run method, right? And you have to call the start method also. But from where you are going to call the start method, we don't have any other alternative. We have the main method here. So you observe, we have defined the main method starting from here. We are ending this main method here, and there are no other methods here located, right? So what you are doing here, you are simply creating 3 objects, 3 threads, T1, T2, T3 objects for the class, the same class in which we are located. Then after that, what you are doing is you are displaying a message system.out.println T1 thread priority concatenated with T1.get priority. So you know about the get priority method, right? We can call the get priority method. So this will display uh, simply the priority of the thread that we just created. So what is the T1 corresponds to the first thread. So this is first thread that we are creating. So totally we are creating 3 threads. And this is second thread. This is third thread. Right? So for each thread, by default, the priority will be 5 only. Right? So now what you're doing, first you're displaying all the 3 threads priority using 3 system.out.println statements. In the first system.out.println, I am displaying the priority of thread 1, first thread. Right? And in the second system.out.println, I am displaying the priority of the second thread. So I have to call t1.getPriority for first thread, and for second thread, I have to call t2.getPriority. get priority, and for the third thread I have to call t3 dot get priority. So for all these threads, by default, what will be the priority? 5. So now I want to modify the thread priorities. So how to set the priority of the thread? We have a method, predefined method called set priority defined in thread class, and because we are extending thread class in our class, so automatically the set priority get priority methods will be also be part of our class, right? And you can directly call them, or if you want to specify, we cannot directly call them because to which class to which thread you are setting the priority. So there are multiple threads located here. You have one main thread which is by default created in every Java program, and then apart from that main thread, we are creating 3 more threads: T1, T2, T3, and we are not giving any name for the thread here, and we are not creating any constructor also for this class. Okay? So the default constructor itself we are using. So default constructor will not give any name for the uh, thread. If you want to set the name of the thread, you have set name and get name methods, right? So using those thread methods, you can set set the name of the thread and get the name of the thread off. But our focus here is only on priorities, not about name of the thread. We are concerned here only about priorities of the thread. So by default, we know that all the threads that are created newly in your program will be given, including the main thread, will be given only default priority 5. And because we are creating these threads from the main thread, automatically the thread group will also be main thread group. But we are not concerned about the thread group and the thread name. Instead, we are concerned only about the priority. We want to manipulate the priorities of threads. Earlier also, we have done this priority program, but we have set the priority for the main thread, not for user created threads. The first program, the very first program that we have seen in multi-threading is modifying the main thread's information. So we have obtained the information of the main thread by calling the current thread method and stored in a thread object, and using the thread object we have displayed the information of the main thread. What is its name, what is its priority, and what is its thread group. And after that we have modified the thread's name to my thread. Instead of main thread, we have changed it to my thread by calling the set name method, and even we have changed the priority also there, right? But here what we are doing, the difference between that program and this program is, here we are setting or we are modifying the priority of user created threads, not the main thread. There we have manipulated the main thread's priority. Now here we are manipulating the user created threads T1, T2, T3. These are created by ourselves in our program. So we are modifying their information, not the main thread's information, right? We can also do for main thread also, but our focus here is to modify the child thread's priority. First, to demonstrate that initially we'll display the initial default priorities of all the 3 threads using the system.out.println. Then to modify the priorities, we have the method called set priority. So we need to call the set priority using the object, respective thread object. For every thread that we created, there is an exclusive object for it, right? T1 for thread 1, first thread, T2 for the second thread, and T3 for third thread, right? So we need to if you want to modify first thread's priority, then we have to call the set priority method using T1 object, which is representing the first thread. If you want to modify the priority of the second thread, then we need to call the set priority method using object for second thread, that is T2. And to modify the priority of the third thread, we need to call the set priority method using the object T3, which is a object which is representing the third thread. So in that way, we are modifying this priority. For the first thread, we are setting it to 2, and for second thread, we are again setting back to 5 only. We are not changing it to something else. And then for third thread, we are modifying it to 8. So if you want to make it to something, say instead of 2, let us make it say 4. So you can make it 4. I'm changing it here, right? Then what I am doing is, so in the next look at the next system.out.println statements. After modifying these priorities of all the three threads, we are displaying their priorities again. So to show that the thread priorities are modified. Okay. Now we have modified the second thread priority to 4, not 5. Let me change it here in the comment as well. The first thread we have given the priority as 2, second thread is 4, third thread is 8. Right? Fine. Then after displaying the modified threads priorities of all the child threads T1, T2, T3 respectively, then what you're doing is now you're manipulating the main thread. So we can also manipulate the main thread, right? So we have already done in a separate program. Now we are doing it again uh, along with the child threads. We are modifying main thread information. First, what I am doing is using the system.out.println. I am calling the current thread method using the thread class. So this is a static method, so I can call it using the class name thread dot, the method name is current thread. So what is this going to do? It is going to return an object of type thread class which will represent the current thread which is under execution now. So currently we are in which thread execution? We didn't start the child threads that we created. We just created the threads, right? By creating objects, 3 different objects, T1, T2, T3. But did we call the start method? So if we don't call the start method, what will happen? The run method will not be called, and so all the 3 threads that even though we have created them, they have not yet started. They are not going to be executed, right? So if they're
Sir,
not going to
sir,
be, yeah,
I have a doubt here.
yeah.
We are giving public void run. Instead of
Yeah.
run method, we can use any method, right?
No, no,
Or
you
it's
have to use run method.
mandatorily run.
It is mandatory. You have to use run method there
Okay, sir.
because start method is a predefined method, and even a run is also a predefined method. But we are just overriding the run method,
Okay, sir.
right? And start method will automatically call the run method. We are not going to call the run method in our program. Automatically, start method will call. We are just going to call the start method. So start method code will have a statement for calling the run method. So it will not be able to call the user-defined methods that we create instead of run if we give something else. The start method is already defined, right? It will only call run method. It will not call our own methods. So it is mandatory to use run method only. Give the method name as run only. Don't give a different method. Okay. So is that okay? Your doubt is clear,
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Got it, sir.
Yeah. So we didn't start all the 3 threads. We just created the threads, and we have assigned by default priority will be assigned for them 5, and we just modified their priorities. That's it. We didn't start them. So currently, all these instructions that we are executing now, they will be part of the main thread only. They will not be part of any child threads. All this code that we are executing now is part of only child thread. No, sorry, main thread, right? So when you call this current thread method by using the thread class, what is it going to return? It is going to return an object of thread class itself, but that object is going to represent whatever thread is currently under execution. That thread it is going to represent. So what is the currently under execution thread? That is the main thread. So whatever object method is going to return now here will be representing the main thread, and we are not holding that instance or object returned by this current thread in a reference variable. Instead, directly we are using that itself as an object to call the getName method. So what is getName method going to do? GetName method will return the name of the thread currently which is under execution. See, I hope you understood this statement. If you have any confusion, let me know, then I'll elaborate it and explain it to you. Did you understand this statement?
So we are
Right?
using correct thread method, right?
Yeah, yeah.
To get name. Okay, sir. Got it.
No, no, no. Clear. Say, be clear. Don't hesitate to ask any doubt. If you're not understanding, please let me know about it, because this is a typical way of using objects here. We didn't use this kind of statement anywhere earlier in any of the
Yeah.
programs. This
So
might be strange to you.
instead of object, we are using thread dot current thread.
Yeah. So
It's a method.
let me put a statement here. Then you'll understand. So we can write like this: thread t is equal to new, or you can write directly thread dot current thread. So what is this current thread method going to return? This
T
current
value.
thread method, it is going to return an object of thread class, right?
Okay.
So to store that object of thread class, on the left hand side of this assignment operator, we need to have a reference variable of class thread itself. Then only we can
Yeah.
assign that object, right, to the T.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is this doing on the right hand side? It is returning an object, and we are storing that object in T.
T.
Now using this T, I can call setName or getName methods, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I can call getName and setName methods. So instead of writing these two statements like this, because this part is going to return an object and we are holding that object in T, instead of holding that object in T directly, we are using that returned object displays to call the getName method. So this is nothing but instead of writing T dot getName, we are writing thread dot current thread dot getName.
Okay, sir.
What,
Understood. Got it.
whatever is highlighted here in blue color, that is nothing but it is going to act like an object, because the current thread method, when it is called using thread class, it will return an object. So this blue color highlighted part will be substituted with the object that is returned by the current thread method. And what is that object representing? It is representing the currently under execution thread. So what is the currently under execution thread? The main thread. So whatever object is replaced here, that is representing the main thread, and using that thread object, I'm calling getName method. So what is
Okay.
getName method going to return here? The name of the thread. So what is the name of the thread here? Main thread. So it is going to display the thread name as main here. Understood now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Then let me remove this one, or I'll put it in comment. So later again, if I have to explain it, or if I send this program to you, then you'll understand later also.
Okay, sir. Got it.
Yeah. System.out.print. Again, I'm sorry, this is over. And then again, system.out.println. You're displaying the main thread priority. So displaying a message main thread priority. And then here also, I'm doing the same thing. Call getName method, I didn't create an object. Directly, I'm using thread.currentThread.getName. Right? So
Yes.
here also, I
Same.
am doing the same thing. Thread.currentThread, but this time I'm calling getPriority method instead of getName. Okay. So
Okay.
this get priority will display the priority of the thread. So with these two statements, what you are displaying is, you are displaying first the name of the thread, then second you are displaying the priority of the thread, right? Okay. So the name of the main thread is displayed and the priority of the main thread is also displayed. So this will display the thread name as main and main thread priority as 5 by default. Then what I am doing is, now I am modifying the priority of the
Sir,
main thread.
now
Yeah.
we if we use thread dot current thread set name, we can change the name, right? For
Yeah, you
the
can change. Yeah, definitely you
yeah.
can change. But you have to
Okay.
pass the new name as parameter to the set name method.
Yeah, in the brackets, like with
In the
the
yeah, in
in the
double quote.
parentheses.
Yeah,
Yeah, double quotes. So main thread is a predefined name for the thread if
yeah.
we don't use anything.
It is not like don't use anything. Main thread
No,
is
if
the
we
one
don't,
which is, yeah. It is by default the name will be the main thread,
yeah, yeah,
main.
okay, yeah,
So now if you want to modify it, you can modify it. So how to modify it? By calling the set name method. We are not
yeah,
modifying the name of the thread here. We have done it earlier in the previous program, the very first
yes,
program we have done it, right? Here we are not changing the thread name. We are only changing the priority of the thread, right? So
okay,
again, what I am doing to earlier we changed the child thread priorities, right here. T1 dot set
Yes.
priority, T2 dot set priority, T3 dot set priority. Now we are modifying the priority of the main thread here. So to do that again, I am calling thread dot current thread, so which will return an object, and using that object I am directly calling set priority, and I'm making the priority of the main thread to 10. Okay, so earlier by default its priority will be 5. Now I'm
Yes.
modifying it to 10. So after modifying the priority of the main thread, so again I have to display and check whether the priority has been changed or not. 10, right? So to do that, what I'm doing, using system.out.println, I'm displaying a message main thread priority. Then again I'm using the same concept of thread.currentThread, which will return an object, and using that object I'm calling get priority. So get priority will return the priority of the main thread now, right? So totally what we have done in the program is simply we just created 3 child threads, but we didn't start their execution. We just created a thread and 3 threads, and we have modified their priorities. We didn't modify their names. We didn't give any name to that thread at all, first of all. So there is no name for all the 3 threads that we created. There is only priority. That too, priority, because priority will be assigned by default, they will have priority as 5. But name, they'll not have any name, right? So we didn't give any name here. We didn't pass any parameter to the constructor because we
Yes.
didn't define any parameterized constructor in this class. So we cannot pass any uh, parameter here. So our focus here is only to modify the priority of the child threads, but we didn't start those child threads. So only main thread will be executing, but priorities of threads, child threads will be modified and displayed. That's it. So that is what we have done in this program. So let me run this program and show it to you. T1, T2, T3, their 3 priorities are by default 5 initially after creating those threads, right? Then we are modifying them to 2, 4, 8 respectively after that. Then we are displaying the name of the main thread. So the name of the main thread is main. And initially the main thread priority is 5. Then after that you are modifying the main thread priority to 10. Okay. So now that you understood how to manipulate these thread priorities, you need to understand one more thing. So Java allows you to give uh, 10 different thread priorities for any thread that you create. If you don't allocate any priority to the threads after you create them, by default, it'll allocate 5 priority to this one. This is called as normal priority. This priority is called as normal priority. Then what about which is the highest priority and which is the lowest priority means? uh, 1 is the highest priority and 10 is the lowest priority, right? If a thread is assigned a priority 1, it is said to be having the highest priority. If a thread is assigned say priority 2, then after 1 2 will be given more priority, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, 7, 8, 9, so on 10. So you can assign only 1 to 10 priorities. You cannot assign priority greater than 10 or less than 1. So let me show it to you. I'll try to assign a priority, say 12 or 11 for thread 1. Okay. Let me compile this again. Program is compiled, but when you run the program, initially it will display the default priorities 5. But after when you try to set the priorities to 11 for the thread 1, it is displaying an exception here. Exception in thread main java.lang illegal argument exception. So what is this exception? Illegal argument exception will occur when you give a invalid argument to a method, to a predefined method. Say for example, uh, a method is defined to receive one integer parameter, but you are trying to give a string parameter when you call that method. So is it a valid? Is it a legal argument? It is not a legal argument, right? So if you try to pass a string parameter instead of an integer parameter, an exception will occur in your program, and that exception is nothing but illegal argument exception. Similarly, there is another case in which also the same illegal argument exception will occur. The set priority method will receive integer values only from 1 to 10. If you try to give any values beyond this range, or that is either less than 1 or greater than 10, then this exception will occur. What is that exception? Illegal argument exception. So where it has occurred at java.lang.thread.setPriority at our class name is thread priority, and in that we have a main method. So in that main method at line number 18 you have this error. So let us check whether what is the line number here. This is line number 18. So you can see at the bottom line number is 18. So here you are getting an error. So let me give now modify it to 0 as well, or I'll give here 2 only. I'll modify it for the second thread now. So instead of 4 I'll give 0. And now we are getting the same exception here, but at line number 19, that is the next line, where you are setting the priority for the second thread. So you don't have any problem for setting the priority for the first thread because it is a valid argument. It is a legal argument because you are passing a value to which is from 1 to 10. But for the second thread, you are passing 0, which is outside the range of 1 to 10 values, 10 integer values. So you cannot give any 0 or negative values, or you cannot give any positive value which is greater than 10. So you can only give from 1 to 10 integer values only. So if you give those 1 to 10 values as priority to any of the threads that you're creating in a program, then they'll be considered as a illegal priority values. But if you try to give any value beyond this range, out of this range, then an exception will be generated. And what is that exception? Illegal argument exception, right? So, so this is important point you need to note here in this program. So for any thread that you're going to create in your program, in your Java program, you must give a priority. Either you should not give any priority, so that default priority 5 will be assigned. If at all, if you want to use a priority to a thread, then you must give the priority values in terms of integers, and that too from values 1 to 10 only, not out of this range 1 to 10 integers, right?
So
And what
what is the point of using priority? It
Yeah,
gonna
I'm coming.
execute first?
I'm coming to that point only, right?
Okay.
So now you must get this doubt that what is the purpose of creating, setting a priority to a thread, right? So as you know, multi-threaded programs or multi-threaded applications, what will happen is there will be all the multiple threads that you create in your program will be concurrently executed by switching among all the threads available by the CPU. So when a CPU wants to switch from one thread to another thread at any point of time, right? Then it will choose the thread which is having more priority, which is having the higher priority. instead of going for immediately whichever thread is in the queue, right? It will choose the thread which is having the higher priority. Got my point?
Yes.
So you will be keeping your program will be switching, right? The CPU will be switching from one thread to another thread. One thread may be suspended for some reason, right? So if the thread is suspended, then out of all the remaining threads that are available, it has to choose one of the thread to switch to. But before we use this priority concept, what is happening is, because all the threads are having the same priority, so whichever is waiting in the queue in the next, that thread will be chosen by the CPU scheduler. But if you are setting the priority, different priority values for all the threads, then when, say for example, now initially T1 first thread has started its execution, and for some reason thread 1 has been suspended. So now you are having options to choose among other three alternative threads: T2 thread, T3 thread, and the main thread, right? So there are three more other threads that are available in the queue. So your CPU has to choose which thread to switch to. Either it has to switch to T2 or T3 or main thread. But if all the remaining three threads, that is T2, T3, and main, all the three are having the default priority 5, 5, 5, so their priorities are same. So which one will be chosen? Whichever is first available in the queue, that will be chosen by the CPU scheduler. But if you assign priorities like this 2, 4, 8, and main thread has priority 10, right? So thread 2 has priority 4, thread 3 has priority 8, and main thread has priority 10. Now, if I want to switch from thread 1 to any of the three other threads, T2, T3, or main thread, because thread 2 is having higher priority, that is 4, CPU will switch to thread 2. Instead of switching to thread 3 or main thread, it will prefer thread 2 because it is having higher priority than the remaining two threads. Okay, understood or not?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So why we have to give that priority? Why we have to give more priority to that one? Because that thread may be performing some important task, which is more important to complete its execution first than the other threads, right? So in that case, will be so. It is just like VIPs arriving in some public places where either they are going by road. So when a convoy of a VIP is coming, what we normally see is normal public will be uh, suspended, right? Traffic will be suspended for normal public, and this VIP will travel through that place, and after he leaves, then the normal public will be allowed to move. That means what, VIP is having more priority than the normal public, right? So in the same way, why the VIPs are allowed to go freely without any delay? Because they'll have some important works to be done. They are working for public interest and they have an important work, so they'll be allowed to go first. Or you can even think of an ambulance. When an ambulance is going on the road, if the traffic is jammed, so the other people will be giving the way to the ambulance because they need to go in a hurry. They want to save some life there, which is more important than other people's work for which they are traveling, right? So in that way, ambulance will have more priority, higher priority than other vehicles that are available on the road. So the other vehicles have to give way to the ambulance. So that is uh, protocol we follow for an ambulance. It will be there in many developed countries, I guess, if I'm correct. Right. So this is what we do even for threads also. Out of all the threads that are available in our program, one or more threads may be performing some important tasks which now must be completed fast in a faster way than compared with the tasks that are performed by the other threads. So based on that importance of the thread, we give high priority to that particular thread. So when a thread has to be switched, we'll thread to the more higher priority thread first. Then from there, if you want to switch again, we'll go to the next higher priority thread. By default, all the threads will have the same priority 5. If you want to give more priority to any of the threads, you have to set the priority by calling the set priority like this. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is about thread priorities.